Chapter 91. TSK. I never imagined that the Flame Emperor, who fought so fiercely with us 7 half-emperors back then, would be injured by a mere 5-star half-emperor. When these words were spoken, the old man with a distorted face was the first to tremble. His originally illusory body became even more illusory at this moment. Facing 7 half-martial emperors by himself. Such strength was truly not something that he could contend against. Xiao Yan completely ignored the third hall master's words. With a wave of his hand, the heavy Xian ruler, which was on the verge of shattering, fell into Xiao Yan's palm. As he held the ruler's hilt, Xiao Yan stared at the third hall master with an ice-cold expression and said in an icy tone. Third hall master, do you remember where the crack on the ruler's body came from? The third hall master was also stunned by Xiao Yan's words. He casually glanced at the heavy Xian ruler, which was on the verge of shattering. The corners of his mouth curled into a cold smile as he sneered. Of course I remember. This crack was left behind by a palm strike from me. However, this heavy Xian ruler is not bad. The ruler's body is made from flaming meteorite mysterious iron. It is truly indestructible. Even now, I can still remember the numbness I felt at that time. TSK. Before the third hall master's words had even left his mouth, Xiao Yan's expression had already turned extremely gloomy. A light flashed in his palm as he withdrew the heavy Xian ruler. His body moved as he suddenly executed the sky extinction step and charged toward the third hall master. TSK, you are not in your best condition now. How can it be so easy to defeat me again? Today, this old man has come fully prepared. After the third hall master's words left his mouth, he flipped his shriveled palm across the air. A pitch-black pearl appeared in his hand. This pearl did not look like much. However, the endless darkness within it caused one to feel a sense of pressure for no reason. When Xiao Yan saw the bead for the first time, a palm-sized jade bottle in the middle-grade storage ring on his hand trembled slightly at this moment, as if it was calling out to something. When Xiao Yan saw that the bead was incomparably strange, he did not dare to be the slightest bit careless in his heart. His body, which was charging forward, once again shook. In a flash, he had appeared beside the third hall master. Fire Lotus. A low cry sounded and the natural energy swiftly gathered. The heavenly flame within Xiao Yan's body suddenly moved. In merely an instant, the third hall master and Xiao Yan were already surrounded by the small angry Buddha lotus flame that permeated the sky. If such a large number of angry Buddha lotus flames were to erupt, it was likely that this entire place would be destroyed in an instant. When the third palace master saw this, he let out a sharp cold laugh. The old face under the mask was filled with disdain. His shriveled hand suddenly clenched, and the black bead in his hand instantly exploded. In merely an instant, the empty space, which had just returned to normal, once again turned into endless darkness at this moment. Heavy spirit region, open! The third hall master let out an explosive cry. In an instant, the sky was filled with an extremely dense, dark energy. Under this energy, even Xiao Yan immediately felt an incomparably terrifying gravity pressing down on him, causing him to be unable to move even an inch. TSK. In this heavy spirit region, it is time for you to restrain your agility and speed that you are so proud of. Today, you, the Flame Emperor, will definitely be mine. The heavy spirit region was forcefully refined by the elites of my Ghost Temple sect by fusing millions of spirits. Once it is unleashed, anyone who is not a member of my Ghost Temple sect or has received my approval will be forcefully suppressed and unable to move even an inch. The third hall master crossed his arms in front of his chest. His eyes were filled with mockery as he looked at Xiao Yan's body, which was almost frozen in the air. A bloody smile appeared at the corner of his mouth under the mask. His body moved and he had already arrived in front of Xiao Yan. A bloodthirsty light flickered in his eyes. His claw struck out and viciously clawed at Xiao Yan's chest. Ha! King Kong glass body. Dragon Phoenix ancient armor. Break it! At this moment, Xiao Yan did not dare to relax even a little. He suddenly let out an explosive cry in his heart and instantly unleashed the King Kong glass body. The Dragon Phoenix bloodline in his body was instantly activated. Pieces of purple gold dragon scales instantly covered Xiao Yan's entire body. Level 8 collapse. Break the mountains and rivers. With a furious roar, Xiao Yan's 1,000 feet tall body suddenly moved. The terrifying pressure within the heavy spirit region was completely ignored by Xiao Yan at this moment. Flame region. Break it. With a punch, the entire world shook. Heavenly flames that could burn the heavens and devour the earth gushed out from the surface of Xiao Yan's body and swept across the heavy spirit region. 10,000 flames destroy evil. Angry Buddha lotus flame, explode. Boom. A rumbling sound that shook the world was suddenly emitted from the heavy spirit region. Yanluo City below had already been blasted into a bottomless abyss. This ancient city had completely disappeared from this world at this moment. The endless crowd had already scattered and fled in all directions. This place had already turned into a true Azura purgatory. The only ones who remained were Suzhen and his great-grandfather. Of course, Mu Ling was rescued by Xiao Yan. Naturally, he was also waiting in the sky for the end of this battle. Today's battle could be said to be terrifying. It was the biggest battle that they had ever witnessed in their lives. 3 elite half-Zun experts and tens of thousands of miles of land were instantly destroyed within a day. Today's battle would definitely be recorded in the annals of the southwestern border. This was because there would definitely be a half-Zun expert falling in Yanluo City today. Everything that Xiao Yan had done was naturally reflected in the eyes of the Third Hall Chief. Being able to forcefully perform such swift actions under such great gravity had indeed caused the Third Hall Chief to feel surprised for Xiao Yan in his heart. Xiao Yan's growth ability was indeed extremely frightening. It was likely that it had only been over 20 years since his true rise. However, it was during these 20 years that Xiao Yan's strength was comparable to some of the true geniuses on the Origin Martial continent. However, the more this was the case, the greater the fear that the Third Hall Chief felt for Xiao Yan in his heart became. If Xiao Yan were to truly grow in the future, it was likely that even their Ghost Temple Gate would follow in Hun Tiandi's footsteps. This was something that they would not allow to happen. Hence, the Third Hall Chief must bring Xiao Yan back today. Xiao Yan, the old me admits that you are indeed one of the few great geniuses that the old me acknowledges. Your training talent can be said to be monstrous. Unfortunately, you and I belong to this world. Bringing you back to our sect is an important task for the old me. Hence, I will have to ask you to make a trip with the old me today. Heavy spirit region, spirit solidifying palm. A hoarse cry sounded. The Third Hall Chief's body flashed and withdrew 1,000 feet away. The seal in his hand changed rapidly. Soon after, countless dark black spirits appeared out of nowhere within the heavy spirit region. They were absorbed into the Third Hall Chief's palm following the seal in his hand. Spirit solidifying palm, breaking the world. A large dark black palm slowly appeared a couple of dozen feet in front of the Third Hall Master. Waves of ghost-like howls were emitted from it. Countless numbers of souls also surfaced on the palm. Their faces, which appeared to be in extreme pain, appeared even darker and deathly still. Humph. You bunch of things that are neither human nor ghost. Today, I, Xiao Yan, shall learn a thing or two from you. Flame domain, fallen heart flame, destroying the evil and devouring the spirit. Purifying demonic lotus flame, incinerate the world. The frightening pressure around Xiao Yan's body temporarily disappeared after the angry Buddha lotus flame appeared. Xiao Yan's body also became lighter. Both of his hands were waved. The fallen heart flame and the purifying demonic lotus flame emitted a puff sound as they rose from his palm. The invisible flame emitted wave after wave of invisible fire airwaves. The heavy spirit region emitted a chi-chi sound wherever it passed. A large black fog appeared in the empty space. The purifying demonic lotus flame in Xiao Yan's other hand had also turned into a beautiful pink lotus flower. It slowly lingered in Xiao Yan's palm. A circular fire airwave spread with each rotation. The spiritual strength, which had just been refined by the fallen heart flame, was completely refined by the purifying demonic lotus flame at this moment. The palm-sized jade bottle in Xiao Yan's storage ring emitted a weak glow after the spiritual strength was refined to a pure state. Immediately, the pure spiritual strength drifted into Xiao Yan's storage ring uncontrollably. Soon after, it was absorbed by the jade bottle. All of this might seem obvious, but no one present discovered it. Even Gu Yu was completely unaware of this. Chapter 92. Bang. With a loud bang, Xiao Yan and the Third Hall Master each took 100 steps back. The Third Hall Master did not expect that Xiao Yan was still able to unleash such a powerful strength despite the strong suppression of the heavy spirit region. Xiao Yan's technique was the first that the Third Hall Master had ever seen among the younger generation. The Flame Emperor Xiao Yan really lives up to his reputation. The Third Hall Master panted heavily. A pair of dark eyes stared intently at Xiao Yan under the mask. A somewhat hoarse voice was slowly emitted from his mouth. The Third Hall Master is indeed worthy of being the Hall Master of the Hall of Souls. Your strength is really not bad. The words from the Third Hall Master's mouth caused Xiao Yan's expression to become even colder. His tone was also extremely cold. At this moment, the two of them appeared to be extremely miserable. The Third Hall Master's black robe was also in tatters. Waves of black fog surged out of the Third Hall Master's body and lingered around him. A fiery red flame palm print could be seen at a glance in front of his chest. The strength of this palm was so great that it caused the third hall master's chest to cave in by an inch. It caused one to involuntarily feel a wave of horror when looking at it. One could vaguely see traces of blood flowing at the corner of the black mask that covered his face. This indicated that the third hall master was injured. Compared to the third hall master, Xiao Yan appeared to be in a much better state. The heavy pressure from the heavy spirit region seemed to have been completely destroyed by Xiao Yan. Of course, this was not the case. With the addition of the Dragon Phoenix ancient armor and the King Kong glass body, Xiao Yan's defense had reached an extremely frightening level. Even though this was the case, the third hall chief's powerful strength still caused Xiao Yan to suffer serious injuries. The golden light that flowed over the enormous body of the King Kong glass body had already become extremely dim. The dragon scales that covered the surface of Xiao Yan's body had already disappeared. Under the golden light, one could vaguely see some fresh blood rolling down Xiao Yan's strong arm. At a glance, it was a little frightening. On Xiao Yan's enormous body, there were a countless number of clear fist imprints on his chest that entered one's eyes. The fist imprints were extremely deep, causing Xiao Yan's chest to appear just like uneven ground. It was a tragic sight that one could not bear to look at. The two of them had exchanged over 100 blows, but they were evenly matched. Although the third hall master was a 7-star ban emperor, he was still forcefully suppressed in front of Xiao Yan's terrifying Dragon Phoenix bloodline. With the Dragon Phoenix bloodline and the Dragon Phoenix ancient armor, Xiao Yan's current defense was comparable to the orthodox ancient void dragon tribe. He was a true human-shaped shield. The body of the dragon tribe was so terrifying that the third hall master did not dare to casually face a young dragon. Moreover, Xiao Yan's current defense was so terrifying that the third hall master could not easily suppress him. Fortunately, Xiao Yan's current strength was still too weak. Even with the Dragon Phoenix bloodline as a supplement, it was still difficult for him to suppress the third hall master. This gave the third hall master a chance to counterattack. Otherwise, it was likely that the third hall master would have died in Xiao Yan's hands even if he had the heavy spirit region as his strongest suppression. The third hall master narrowed his eyes and scanned his surroundings. His gaze then landed on Yudu, who was only left with his soul. A light flashed deep in his eyes, and the third hall master's words drifted into Yudu's ears. Old Ghost Yudu, I can see that you have been escaping from the Du-Yi sect for many years. I believe that you don't want to easily lose such a happy life, right? The expression in Old Ghost Yudu's eyes changed. His dry lips trembled slightly. He lifted his eyelids, only to see that the third hall master was focusing all his attention on Xiao Yan. Only then did he react and transmit a question back. Who exactly are you? TSK, Old Ghost Yudu, don't tell me that you can't tell who I am. You are that group of ghost things from the Ghost Temple sect. The third hall master's words were clear. The expression in Yudu's eyes became increasingly fearful as he immediately replied. However, the third hall master could not help but laugh mockingly. What are the people from my Ghost Temple sect? TSK, compared to my Ghost Temple sect, heh? Your Du-Yi sect doesn't seem to be any better. For the sake of upgrading his woeful poison body and allowing himself to possess a genuine woeful poison body, he actually wanted to forcefully devour the sect's holy maiden. Such methods are not the least bit inferior to those of my Ghost Temple sect. TSK. Humph. The old me has already severed my relationship with the Du-Yi sect. What does the matter of the Du-Yi sect have to do with the old me? If you have something to say, just say it. If there is nothing, don't implicate the old me. The old me is a person who is about to die. It is not in vain to seek longevity. The third hall master laughed sinisterly when he heard this. He ignored the indifference on Yudu's face as he smiled and said, That's right. You, whose strength is not a Do-Di, will indeed not be able to last for long in your spiritual state. Although there are 3 living bodies here, their strength is ultimately insufficient to accommodate your spirit. The third hall master paused when he spoke until this point. He did not say anything else. A desolate dark glow appeared deep within Yudu's eyes. There was also fear contained within it. Who didn't fear death? Even if it was Yudu, an old monster who had lived for God knows how many years, if he could survive, he, Yudu, would definitely not think about facing death. The third hall master had also seen this little fear deep within Yudu's heart. Hence, he spoke in such a manner in order to stir up the hope of living in Yudu's heart. You want the old me to join hands with you to deal with this matter together? Yudu's dry throat involuntarily moved a little. He forcefully suppressed the emotions in his heart and opened his mouth to ask. The third hall master also understood in his heart when he saw this. He coldly laughed in his heart and transmitted a message. Brother Yudu is indeed worthy of being a person who has lived for a long time. This is exactly what I am thinking in my heart. Yudu had already been completely bewitched by the third hall master with these words. Even though he was still on guard in his heart, how could the current Yudu fight against the third hall master who was at his peak condition? All of this was definitely within the third hall master's control. The things that had happened between the two of them might appear to have taken a long time, but if they were to be separated, it was merely a matter of a few breaths. A bandit was able to freely use any amount of time. A few breaths was already enough for them to do many things. The two of them had just finished their discussion when the third hall master had already focused all of his attention on Xiao Yan. His eyes narrowed and a stern expression flashed across them. Flame D Xiao Yan, TSK 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 TSK. Try and receive an attack from the old me. Heavy spirit region. Rise for me. An explosive cry sounded. Another layer of dark black ink-like darkness came pressing down on Xiao Yan's body outside of the empty space that was covered by an endless amount of flame. In just an instant, the flame domain that Xiao Yan had created with endless heavenly flames was forcefully pushed back, as if it had shrunk. It only stopped when it was 1,000 feet away from Xiao Yan's body. Xiao Yan could not help but frown when he saw this. This heavy spirit region was actually so powerful. Even with the support of the flame domain, Xiao Yan still felt an extremely powerful gravitational force pressing down on his body, causing Xiao Yan's aura to become slightly heavier. When the third hall master saw this, the corners of his mouth curled into a sneer under the mask. His body moved and he retreated 100 steps. He raised both of his hands in front of his chest, and the seals in his hands changed rapidly. The space in front of the third hall master twisted, and a pitch-black darkness appeared in front of him. Without any hesitation, the third hall master plunged into it. Instantly, within the range of Xiao Yan's spiritual power, all of the third hall master's aura disappeared instantly, as if he had never appeared. It was extremely strange. Xiao Yan's expression changed slightly. He did not expect the third hall master to have such a trick up his sleeve. In this case, it would be much more difficult to deal with the third hall master. Just as Xiao Yan was about to move, the space beside him surged. Wave-like ripples spread out from the space beside Xiao Yan. Immediately, a withered palm suddenly slammed out, viciously slamming towards Xiao Yan's head. Xiao Yan was initially shocked by this sudden attack, but he quickly reacted. As his body retreated, he also slammed out a palm, violently slamming it against the palm. At the moment of collision, a huge force was transmitted from Xiao Yan's palm, forcing Xiao Yan to take half a step back. On the other hand, Xiao Yan's powerful palm slammed out across the air, but it did not hit anything. What exactly is this thing? It's actually so powerful. Not only did his attack fail, but he had also suffered a hidden loss. This caused Xiao Yan to feel extremely fearful in his heart. However, even though he was fearful, Xiao Yan also understood in his heart that the third hall master would not be able to hold on for long given his current condition. Otherwise, he would have used this method from the start. After making up his mind, Xiao Yan also poured out all of his spiritual strength, wrapping it within 100 feet radius around him. Only in this way would Xiao Yan be able to react as quickly as possible when danger approached. Qi, qi. With a qi sound, Xiao Yan's body turned on the spot. His palm violently slammed out, violently slamming towards a certain turbulent space behind him. Yellow spring palm. Xiao Yan threw his palm forward and the turbulent space instantly stilled. Immediately, it shook a couple of times before it recovered its calmness. Xiao Yan, on the other hand, continued to carefully observe the space around him as he waited for the third hall master to appear. Bang! Buddha palm. Suddenly, the space above Xiao Yan's head became distorted. An enormous towering palm appeared out of nowhere. It carried an imposing aura that could cover the sky as it pressed down on Xiao Yan. The strength of the palm was so great that it was difficult for Xiao Yan's body to move like a stone statue. However, how could Xiao Yan allow himself to be trampled on? The Do Qi in his body suddenly erupted. The strength of the heavenly flame instantly spread out. The burning heavenly flame instantly wrapped around Xiao Yan, forming a countless number of fire clusters of similar size within 1,000 feet of Xiao Yan. Soon after, under a thought from Xiao Yan, the countless number of fire clusters suddenly flickered. They instantly transformed into countless number of fire pillars that shot towards the sky. Their aura was like a rainbow as they attempted to break the enormous palm. The third hall master was clearly quite afraid of Xiao Yan's heavenly flame. Hence, he revealed his body from the heavy spirit region. In a flash, he had already appeared above the enormous palm. The enormous force under his feet shook. The speed of the enormous palm, which was already swiftly slamming down, became a little faster. In an instant, it collided with the countless number of fire pillars. Bang, bang. a wild and ferocious storm instantly swept across the entire sky, causing the land within a radius of 10,000 miles to be covered by a layer of fog. The originally clear sky also turned dark at this moment. The countless number of fire pillars that reached the sky still stood proudly in the sky within the heavy spirit region. They each occupied a piece of land with the enormous palm, standing equally against it. The third Hall Master was clearly extremely dissatisfied with this. Even after using the suppression of the heavy spirit region, he was still unable to quickly finish off Xiao Yan. If news of this were to spread, his reputation as the Hall Master would likely become a laughingstock. Humph! With a cold snort, the third Hall Master suddenly waved his hand. The seals in his hand rapidly changed. Soon after, one could see the heavy spirit region, which encompassed the entire world, rapidly shrink at this moment. In just a moment, the heavy spirit region, which covered the entire sky, had already shrunk to a few thousand feet in size. The power within it was naturally stacked up. After the third Hall Master completed all of this, Xiao Yan's expression became completely grave. At this moment, it was extremely difficult for Xiao Yan to even move a finger. Even the fire pillars that reached the sky seemed to be forcefully pressed down by this extremely frightening gravity. One could imagine the true power of the heavy spirit region. The muscles all over Xiao Yan's body tensed up. The Dragon Phoenix bloodline in his body continued to circulate. The Dragon Phoenix ancient armor and the King Kong glass body were once again displayed. Even so, Xiao Yan still did not have enough strength to resist the heavy spirit region. In the sky, the endless number of fire pillars had already been continuously pressed down by the enormous hand. It was likely that Xiao Yan would soon become its next prey. Ha! A cry was emitted from his throat with great difficulty. The heavenly flame within Xiao Yan's body suddenly swept over his entire body. Immediately, it shrank into the middle of the vortex within Xiao Yan's body and transformed into the appearance of an old man. The old man's face was ruddy. His long hair of various colors was the most eye-catching. His long hair was actually divided into 21 different colors. The appearance of this old man was that of the Tushi ancient god. However, this old man was merely formed from the Emperor Flame at this moment. He was not the true Tushi ancient god. A brilliant flame glow suddenly shot out from deep within Xiao Yan's eyes the moment the old man returned to his position. The veins on his forehead swiftly protruded. His strong body once again grew by a couple of feet. His entire body shook as an explosive roar was emitted from Xiao Yan's mouth towards the sky. Heavenly Flame Merge, Extermination Fire Body. Activate. His voice had just sounded when the Tushi ancient god's tightly shut eyes within Xiao Yan's body suddenly opened. A vast and mighty glow rose to the sky. In an instant, it completely merged with Xiao Yan. In an instant, Xiao Yan's body, which had grown by 1,000 feet from the King Kong glass body, once again swelled. A wave of frightening flame strength suddenly swept out from deep within Xiao Yan's body, causing this enormous body of Xiao Yan to instantly transform into a completely flaming person. The heavenly flame that incinerated the sky continued to sweep out from within Xiao Yan's body. The flame domain that was agglomerated from the heavenly flame suddenly emitted a bang sound. The heavy spirit region, which had shrunk by a couple of times, emitted a bang sound as it was forcefully blasted apart. The flame domain that emitted a high temperature instantly swept apart like floodwater. Roar. Fallen Heart Flame. Purifying Demonic Lotus Flame. Burn for me. A rolling thunder-like roar was emitted from Xiao Yan's mouth, causing the entire place to tremble unceasingly. Xiao Yan's entire body shook. His right hand was suddenly waved. Immediately, he clenched it with great force. The heavenly flame flowed out from between the gaps of Xiao Yan's fist like flowing water. Immediately, Xiao Yan's right arm once again shook. His foot suddenly stomped on the empty air. Endless heavenly flame shot out from under Xiao Yan's feet, entering deep into the ground and disappearing. Xiao Yan's enormous body borrowed the force and suddenly charged toward the enormous palm. In merely an instant, he had already arrived under this enormous palm. Xiao Yan's fist was thrown out. A frightening fist wind was wrapped around a frightening heavenly flame that could incinerate the empty air. It suddenly smashed into the enormous palm. The purifying demonic lotus flame and the fallen heart flame that wrapped around Xiao Yan's body instantly and easily refined the black fog around him. However, Xiao Yan's movements did not stop. His fist had yet to land when another punch was already thrown out. It violently smashed into the enormous palm that blotted out the sun. The frightening aura caused the entire sky to tremble repeatedly. It had the momentum to break the sky. Roar. Angry Buddha Lotus Flame, Agglomerate. Xiao Yan's right hand suddenly waved. Immediately, he clenched it across the air. When he opened it once again, a three-colored fire lotus the size of a soccer ball had already appeared in Xiao Yan's palm. Without any hesitation, Xiao Yan's palm was violently thrown out. The places where the palm wind passed were completely refined by the fallen heart flame and the purifying demonic lotus flame. Even when Xiao Yan sent the angry Buddha lotus flame into his palm, he did not pause even a little. Roar! Xiao Yan's body flashed and he explosively withdrew by 100 steps. Suddenly, he let out a long roar towards the sky. The strength of the heavenly flame instantly covered the sky. After the long roar, the entire place was immediately wrapped by a wild and violent suction force. The endless black fog was completely swallowed by Xiao Yan into his body. Even a portion of the enormous palm that reached the sky was swallowed and refined by Xiao Yan. The third hall master's face was indifferent in the face of all of this. He naturally knew that it was impossible to rely on this palm to subdue Xiao Yan. However, this was not his aim. Hence, he would naturally not stop Xiao Yan from doing whatever he wanted. What he wanted now was for Xiao Yan to exhaust himself. After all, even he did not have the confidence to completely defeat a powerful Xiao Yan. However, the thing that caused the third hall master to be surprised was that this was the first time that he had seen this kind of secret technique that Xiao Yan was using. It was even able to forcefully raise the strength of a Bandi expert by so much. This kind of secret technique could be said to be terrifying. Although the third hall master was tempted, he was not stupid. He could naturally tell that it was impossible to use this kind of secret technique without the support of many heavenly flames. Roar! A moment later, the originally deep and dark light on the enormous palm that blotted out the sun under the third hall master's feet had already become extremely dim. It was likely that the energy within it had already been completely swallowed and refined by Xiao Yan. Grade 8 collapse. With an explosive cry, Xiao Yan's body shook in the air. His foot once again violently stomped on the empty air. His body flashed and completely shattered the enormous palm, turning it into light spots that permeated the sky. Soon after, Xiao Yan's fist directly struck the third hall master's face, intending to kill the third hall master in one blow. At this moment, Xiao Yan was completely aware that the time that he could maintain the extermination fire body was almost up. If he was unable to quickly finish off the third hall master during this period of time, it was likely that he would leave behind quite a lot of trouble in the future. Xiao Yan's fist pierced through the empty air. Even though he was a great distance away, the blazing wind still caused the third hall master to feel a fiery heat all over his body. With regards to this, the third hall master naturally did not dare to underestimate it. Fortunately, he had a card up his sleeve and was not the slightest bit afraid of Xiao Yan's unstoppable attack. Just as Xiao Yan was within 100 feet of the third hall master, a ruthless expression suddenly flashed across the third hall master's eyes. He violently stomped on the empty air and an extremely frightening gravity suddenly pressed down on Xiao Yan's head. At the same time, a deep and dark light flashed under Xiao Yan's feet, causing Xiao Yan's charging body to suddenly be fixed in the empty air, unable to move even a little. The strength of that pressure caused Xiao Yan's frightening extermination fire body to be completely absorbed into his body in less than an instant. His enormous body also instantly returned to its original form. The clothes on Xiao Yan's body were completely shattered. The long robe on his upper body had long since disappeared. His white body was even more eye-catching in this darkness. This was especially the case when there was a hollow green-colored jade pendant in front of Xiao Yan's chest. That was a gift that Lian Er had given Xiao Yan before he left Qingyang City. She said that it was the only thing her grandmother had left for her. Old ghost, you do. If you don't act now, when will you? The third hall master also suddenly let out an explosive roar at this moment. It was not difficult to hear that even the third hall master was anxious within his voice. From the looks of it, he was not as relaxed as he appeared to be earlier when he forcefully suppressed Xiao Yan. When old ghost Yudu heard this, a glint instantly flashed deep within his eyes. His body flashed and he had already appeared between Xiao Yan and the third hall master. His somewhat illusory body made Yudu appear even weaker at this moment. However, his eyes were still flickering with an excited glow. Yudu's heart was naturally extremely excited to be able to recover his physical body and destroy Xiao Yan to take revenge for his physical body. The corners of old ghost Yudu's mouth involuntarily revealed a cruel smile as he stood in front of Xiao Yan. Immediately, his eyes swept over and paused for a moment before they were fixed on the jade pendant. In an instant, Yudu's eyes suddenly widened. An expression of disbelief flashed deep within his pupils. It was a long while later before Yudu's eyes shifted away from the jade pendant with great difficulty. He looked at Xiao Yan and cried out sternly. Tell me where that girl is and I guarantee that I will leave you with a wisp of your soul. Chapter 93. Tell me where that girl is and I guarantee that I will leave you with a wisp of your soul. Old ghost Yudu's eyes stared intently at Xiao Yan. An endless amount of greed was revealed in his eyes. His expression appeared somewhat ferocious. His originally distorted face caused one to feel even more terrified at this moment. Xiao Yan could not help but frown when he heard Yu Du's words. He thought to himself, is this old ghost Yu Du asking me about Lian Er? Could it be that Lian Er's woeful poison body is related to the Crossing Disaster sect? The change in expression on Xiao Yan's face was naturally captured by the astute old ghost Yu Du. When he saw Xiao Yan's expression, he was even more certain that Xiao Yan, who was in front of him, knew the whereabouts of the little girl he had been searching for all this while. A cold smile involuntarily flashed across the corners of Yu Du's mouth. It looked extremely strange and sinister. After which, he slowly lifted his slightly transparent palm and suddenly waved it. His palm turned into a claw and stood upright in front of Xiao Yan. His 5 shriveled yet incomparably sharp fingers caused tiny cracks to involuntarily appear on Xiao Yan's face. Drops of bright red blood spread out. In the withered wind, Xiao Yan looked like an assassin who had walked through a sea of blood. His entire body was filled with a vicious aura. Upon seeing this scene, the third hall master, who was standing behind old ghost Yu Du, could not help but frown. What old ghost Yu Du had said earlier naturally fell into the third hall master's ears. However, the third hall master did not have any impression of the little girl that old ghost Yu Du had mentioned. One must know that ever since Xiao Yan came to the Yuanwu continent, he had been constantly being pursued by the third hall master and the others. If there was such an eye-catching little girl by his side, they would definitely know. However, the scene today caused him to repeatedly ponder. He did not expect that old ghost Yu Du was still hiding something from him and even wanted to secretly scheme against him. This person really had unfathomable motives. However, after the third hall master noticed the rich greed in old ghost Yu Du's eyes, his doubtful expression immediately changed as though he had thought of something. A strange look involuntarily flashed across his eyes as he looked at Xiao Yan. How is it? As long as you tell this old man where that little girl is now, this old man will leave behind a wisp of essence spirit for you today. The misunderstanding between the two of us today will also end here. I will walk my own path, and you will walk your own path. In the future, we will have nothing to do with each other. Xiao Yan's heart involuntarily trembled a little as he sensed the unprecedented dangerous aura in front of him. He would naturally not reveal the matter regarding Lian Er. The fact that Xiao Yan was able to grow to such an extent meant that his experience was comparable to some genuine old demons. In Xiao Yan's eyes, the words from old ghost Yu Du's mouth were already filled with loopholes. Leaving behind a strand of his soul was no different from directly erasing him. At most, it would only allow him to struggle in this world for a while longer. This fellow would definitely not give him the slightest chance of survival. Perhaps old ghost Yu Du's actions were even more vicious than directly killing him. With Xiao Yan's personality, how could he possibly submit to such things? He would rather be a heroic spirit than a coward. In the face of a great calamity, he did not fear death. This was the real reason why Xiao Yan was able to grow to such an extent. With this thought in mind, a heroic spirit rose in Xiao Yan's heart. The aura in his eyes solidified, and a glint flashed across them. The gaze with which he looked at old ghost Yu Du became increasingly sharp. His eyes flashed, and the crack at the corner of his eyes caused the corners of Xiao Yan's eyes to involuntarily tremble. Although this scene was not considered eye-catching, it was still reflected in old ghost Yu Du's eyes. Immediately, old ghost Yu Du released a cold laugh in his heart. As expected, the stronger one is, the more one fears death. TSK. As long as Xiao Yan's life falls into this old man's hands today, I will see if you will obediently explain yourself. TSK. A thought passed through old ghost Yu Du's mind, and the vigorous spiritual strength in his body once again gathered between his fingers. His originally sharp aura soared once again. This time, Xiao Yan's facial features became a little distorted under this force. TSK, Flame Emperor Xiao Yan, I wonder if you have thought it through. As long as you can tell me where that little girl is now, I will guarantee that your soul will not be destroyed today. I will allow you to regain your physical body. Old ghost Yu Du's eyes suddenly became sharp. He waved his hand, and the space in front of Xiao Yan instantly collapsed. The pitch-black and deep endless void gave one a chilling feeling of being devoured. It was as though once one entered, one would never be able to come out alive. Xiao Yan's expression involuntarily changed when he saw this. At this moment, he was being suppressed by the third hall master's full strength, and the might of the heavy spirit region poured out in torrents. Even Xiao Yan would have difficulty turning the situation around at this moment. If old ghost Yu Du really attacked him, it was likely that he would really take a step into the door of life and death today. Old ghost Yu Du was quite satisfied with the change in Xiao Yan's expression. What he wanted to see was the frightened expression on Xiao Yan's face. As long as this was the case, he would feel even more comfortable teasing Xiao Yan. He wanted Xiao Yan to lose all the dignity that belonged to a half-emperor expert. Xiao Yan's heart gradually calmed down in response to this. It seemed that old Ghost Yu Du only wanted to toy with him. However, how could Xiao Yan be manipulated by others? His expression immediately changed, and he coldly smiled at old Ghost Yu Du. He laughed. Looks like you don't really dare to kill me. Oh. Old Ghost Yu Du's expression changed slightly, and he coldly snorted. His shriveled hand grabbed Xiao Yan's neck, and he suddenly tightened his grip. Xiao Yan's face was already flushed red from suffocation, but his expression when he looked at old Ghost Yu Du still did not show the slightest bit of fear. Humph. With a cold snort, old Ghost Yu Du loosened his grip and removed it from Xiao Yan's neck. Immediately, he coldly said. You are really bold. You actually dare to use this to provoke this old man. Xiao Yan smiled when he heard this. He coughed and panted for a while, and his flushed face gradually faded. He ignored old Ghost Yu Du's cold words, and his eyes stared straight at old Ghost Yu Du. He coldly laughed and said. Since you want to obtain something from me, I can naturally ask you to do something for me. Don't you think so? Old Ghost Yu Du narrowed his eyes. He naturally understood why Xiao Yan said these words. At this moment, he was under the control of the heavy spirit region. The reason why he said these words was because he wanted him to attack the third hall master behind him. When the third hall master heard Xiao Yan's words, he could not help but be slightly shocked. The expression on his face also became ugly. Did this old Ghost Yu Du really dare to attack him? Old Ghost Yu Du. This Xiao Yan is a great enemy of both of us. At this moment, the old me has restrained him with great difficulty. If you were to change your mind at this moment, forget about the old me, it is likely that the both of us will lose our old lives here today. At this critical moment, the third hall master could not help but shout at old Ghost Yu Du, hoping that he would be able to attack Xiao Yan first. After all, he did not wish for his plan to kill two birds with one stone to be destroyed by Xiao Yan. When old Ghost Yu Du heard the third hall master's words, his heart moved slightly. He had personally experienced Xiao Yan's fighting strength. Forget about the current him, even if Xiao Yan was at his peak with the protection of the heavenly flame, he would definitely not be a match for him. Now, he naturally did not want to let go of such a good opportunity. However, the jade pendant on Xiao Yan's chest was truly tempting him. Others might not know about that little girl, but he was someone who came from the Du Yi sect. How could he not know? That little girl would allow him to become a truly powerful person. At that time, forget about the Du Yi sect, it was likely that even the strongest faction would have to think twice before facing him. One side was life, and the other side was strength. One could not have both the fish and the bear's paw. Today, he could only choose one. Old Ghost Yu Du narrowed his eyes into a line as he looked at Xiao Yan. Immediately, he glanced at the third hall master from the corner of his eyes. If either of these two people were to survive, they would definitely be a great threat to him. If he wanted to live, then the two people beside him must die today. A ruthless look flashed across the depths of his eyes. Two powerful half-martial emperors actually wanted him, a seriously injured person, to judge their life and death. To him, this was a kind of opportunity. One cannot have both the fish and the bear's paw? TSK, 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 TSK. Today, this old man wants to see if this old man can have both. Old Ghost Yu Du glanced at Xiao Yan with a pitiful expression. After which, he used the corner of his eyes to stare at the third hall master behind him. Old Ghost Yu Du licked his dry lips in a bloodthirsty manner and sneered at Xiao Yan. Flame Emperor Xiao Yan, TSK, 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 TSK. I'm sorry, but this old man still chooses to live. After all, without life, what is the use of strength? Before his voice sounded, the expression on Xiao Yan's face had already become solemn. This old Ghost Yu Du clearly intended to kill him. When the third hall master, who was standing behind old Ghost Yu Du, heard these words of old Ghost Yu Du, he involuntarily let out a cold laugh in his heart. As long as Xiao Yan was defeated, no one in Yanluo City would be able to fight against him today. On the other side, without waiting for Xiao Yan to make a move, old Ghost Yu Du's terrifying finger pointed at the spot between Xiao Yan's brows. At the same time, a somewhat hoarse cry was emitted from old Ghost Yu Du's mouth. Poison finger. As old Ghost Yu Du cried out, a shriveled palm suddenly smashed towards the third hall master's chest behind him. This seemingly ordinary palm caused the entire world to shake the moment it was unleashed. In an instant, the empty space shattered, and the area within 100-mile radius around the three of them was turned into nothingness. A half-martial emperor was indeed extremely powerful. Even though his body was seriously injured, he was still able to attract the might of the world. He was indeed worthy of being called a true peak expert in the continent. The third hall master's expression had already turned into one of shock the moment the palm struck. He did not expect old Ghost Yudu to actually dare to attack him. However, the opportunity had already passed, and it was already too late for him to do anything. Additionally, with the control of the heavy spirit region, it was even more impossible for him to dodge. Hence, he could only stand and watch the attack arrive. In merely an instant, old Ghost Yudu's towering finger had already arrived in front of Xiao Yan. The strong and ferocious wind caused Xiao Yan's long hair to dance continuously. Xiao Yan also involuntarily shut his eyes, as though he was waiting for the moment of death to arrive. Is this really the only way, Ancestor Xiao Xian, Sun Heir, Kai Lin? I never expected that I will have to completely leave all of you so soon after arriving in this strange world. At this moment, a bitterness involuntarily surged into Xiao Yan's heart. The reluctance to part with Sun Heir and Kai Lin in his heart was indescribable. Additionally, he felt guilt towards Xiao Xian. Bang! An explosive sound appeared. Two figures flew out from the pitch-black darkness in the sky. Soon after, they heavily smashed into the endless abyss, and their figures disappeared. Chapter 94. Above the horizon, in the endless void, two figures flew out with a loud bang. They crossed each other in mid-air and then plunged into the vast and endless abyss. Their figures disappeared in a flash. In the void, a circle of white flame ripples spread out. Everywhere it passed, even the endless void could not help but tremble. This was enough to show how powerful it was. A young man covered in wounds stood in the middle of the flame ripple. Fresh blood covered his body as he stood in the empty space in a daze. The expression on his face was a little dull because of this sudden unexpected change. Only after a dozen breaths later did the eyes of the man suddenly emit a bright glow of having survived a calamity. Old Gu, you have intervened. However, didn't you say? This man was surprisingly Xiao Yan, who was about to be struck by old Ghost Yudu's poison centipede finger earlier. If that finger had struck, Xiao Yan's soul would have been destroyed and he would have completely disappeared from this world. However, from the looks of it, it seemed that Gu Yu had saved him. Before Xiao Yan could speak, Gu Yu took over. He curled his lips and snorted softly. His tone was strange as he spoke. Brat, don't be so happy. This old me is not in the mood to save you. However, this old me finds that little brat from earlier an eyesore. Hence, I intervened to teach him a lesson. However, the body of a bandit is not even comparable to an ant in front of this old me. You actually dare to speak such arrogant words and look down on my heavenly flame body. Humph humph, do you really think that this old me is made of mud? Xiao Yan felt warmth in his heart upon hearing this. Although Gu Yu had said this, he would not have intervened in such a dangerous situation if he had not wanted to save Xiao Yan. These words were merely an excuse for himself. Old Gu, thank you very much. The corners of Xiao Yan's mouth lifted into a warm smile. He thanked Gu Yu in his heart, but he was fooled by Gu Yu's soft snort. Xiao Yan smiled and did not say anything else. Instead, he turned his eyes to the endless abyss below him. Although Gu Yu's attack was powerful, his objective was not to kill old Ghost Yudu instead, it was to send him flying. After all, he would definitely not disobey the orders of the Tu-Shi ancient god, even though he had already violated the orders of the Tu-Shi ancient god. With Gu Yu's powerful attack, the heavy spirit region, which had been ruthlessly suppressing Xiao Yan, was broken by the bone-chilling flame. In front of Gu Yu's strength, the heavy spirit region, which Xiao Yan found extremely troublesome, was merely a toy that could be destroyed in the blink of an eye. At this moment, the figures of old Ghost Yudu and the third hall master were suspended in the ink-black void with great difficulty under the endless abyss. Old Ghost Yudu's body, which was continuously turning illusory, appeared as though it did not exist after being struck by Gu Yu's blazing bone-chilling flame. If it was not for the layer of dim fluorescent light on the surface of his body and the endless darkness, it was likely that one would not be able to see his body. Although the third hall master's condition was a little better compared to old Ghost Yudu, it was clearly not much better. His black robes had already been turned into nothingness by the bone-chilling flame. The dense black fog lingering around his body had also become dark at this moment. It was possible to vaguely see a skinny corpse-like body within it. The strange mask that covered his face had also disappeared, revealing a bone-like face. A pair of shady old eyes seemed to be embedded in the depths of his eye sockets, and his bony face looked as if only a piece of skull was left. Just what was that earlier? Did Xiao Yan's heavenly flame erupt? Or did he use that Buddha's fiery lotus? The shady old eyes of the third hall master appeared to have been shut. Both of his eyes stared intently at the empty space in front of him. The monstrous fury in his heart caused the space itself to become a little distorted. The third hall master's shriveled hand rubbed the corner of his chin. There was a deep wound at that spot, so deep that one could see his bone. However, the third hall master did his best to suppress it. Old ghost you old thing who will not die. You are really tired of living. You actually dared to scheme against the old me. You have caused the old me to end up in such a state. Humph. Today, the old me will definitely capture the both of you even if I have to use everything I have. Old ghost today, the old me will allow you to witness the tactics of my ghost temple gate. In the sky, Xiao Yan's tensed body lasted for a full 15 minutes. Finally, his entire body softened and he sat down in the empty space. His mouth continued to pant coarsely. The tight muscles all over his body suddenly relaxed. Sweat gushed out from the pores all over his body like a fountain, causing the wounds all over Xiao Yan's body to erupt. Waves of heart-piercing pain caused Xiao Yan to involuntarily suck in a breath of cool air. After swiftly consuming a few grade 9 energy recovery pills, Xiao Yan's body sat cross-legged in the empty space. The flame art chi method in his body rapidly circulated. In an instant, the entire sky changed color. The natural energy appeared from the empty space and covered the sun. It was like a cloud that swept across the entire sky. Above Xiao Yan's head, a tornado that was 1,000 feet wide poured down with a vast natural energy. It was like a meteor waterfall that flowed into Xiao Yan's body. Unfortunately, even with such a monstrous power in the outside world, when the natural energy entered Xiao Yan's body, it was like a small stream of water, utterly inadequate. It was likely that Xiao Yan would not be able to quickly recover within a short period of time. In the endless abyss, old ghost Yudu's face was grave as he looked at the third hall master in front of him. His increasingly faint soul made him appear even weaker at this moment. Humph, why? Do you want to deal with the old me? Old ghost Yudu vigilantly watched the third hall master. It was a long while later before he let out a cold snort and said in a cold voice. The third hall master could not help but curl the corners of his mouth when he heard this. He revealed a cold smile and let out a cold snort. His eyes stared at old ghost Yudu and sneered. Why? You just launched a sneak attack on the old me and now you want to wash your hands of it and act like nothing happened? Old ghost Yudu laughed coldly when he heard this. He had already expected the third hall master to say such a thing. The moment the third hall master's words sounded, old ghost Yudu laughed coldly and replied. TSK, since you also have ulterior motives against the old me, it is not impossible for me to give you a warning first. Humph. Warning, what a good warning. Since you want to say that I have ulterior motives against you, I will let you see just what kind of ulterior motives I have for you today. Before his voice sounded, the third hall master had already absorbed the black fog that lingered around his body into his body. Immediately after, he put his shriveled hands in front of his chest. His palms moved rapidly and numerous complicated seals were quickly formed. Circles of invisible ripples formed in the space in front of him. When old ghost Yudu saw this, his originally solemn face instantly turned as pale as a sheet of paper. He looked at the third hall master as though he had seen the king of hell. He was incomparably terrified. Perhaps other people did not know this move that the third hall master was using at this moment, but Yudu was someone who came from a faction in the middle region. He was naturally very clear about this secret technique of a faction in the middle region. The spirit-devouring skill was the inner sect chi method of the ghost slaughter sect. Its greatest characteristic was that it could forcefully devour other people's souls and maximize the strength of the original body into one's own body. Although the backlash after using this chi method was extremely great, it was still a last resort. At this moment, the third hall master was obviously preparing to forcefully devour old ghost Yudu's soul and add it to his original body to deal with Xiao Yan. In this way, not only would he be able to eliminate old ghost Yudu, but he would also be able to capture Xiao Yan. It would be killing two birds with one stone. Even if he ended up being seriously injured, as long as he could bring Xiao Yan back, the third hall master was certain that not only would his strength recover, but his strength and status would also rise in the sect. Therefore, how could he not give it his all? Have you really gone mad? You actually dare to use such a chi method that destroys your essence for the sake of Xiao Yan. Are you really seeking death? At this moment, old ghost Yudu's heart had become abnormally terrified. The third hall master was obviously not trying to scare him. If he was allowed to continue, his old life would really end here today. Old ghost Yudu clenched his teeth. A ferocious expression was revealed on his face. Both of his hands were swiftly lifted and he stood in front of the third hall master. A thought passed through his heart and numerous seals were swiftly formed. When the seals in old ghost Yudu's hands changed, the spiritual strength all over old ghost Yudu's body was absorbed into his body and swiftly agglomerated. A moment later, it transformed into a bright bead the size of an egg. This bead was old ghost Yudu's spiritual essence. The heart of the third hall master involuntarily tightened when he saw this scene. old ghost Yudu was clearly intending to use the self-destruction of his soul to drag him into the abyss. Humph. If you want to die, you want to bring the old me along. How ruthless. However, in front of the spirit-devouring art of the old me, you can only dream. Before his voice sounded, the hand movements of the third hall master suddenly increased. The do chi in his body was like a flowing river as it poured out. In merely a couple of breaths, the seals in the hands of the third hall master had entered the final stage. His hand movements did not stop. The third hall master lifted his hand and his sharp fingernail was like a blade as it cut across his brow. A bloody scar appeared as a drop of blood from his brow dripped onto the tip of the third hall master's finger. Blood seal, agglomerate. A stern cry sounded as the bloody finger of the third hall master swiftly drew in the air in front of him. An extremely strange blood seal was swiftly formed. Without any hesitation, the third hall master threw a palm forward. The blood seal also imprinted itself into old ghost Yudu's chest at that instant. Suddenly, a bright red glaring blood light shot from old ghost Yudu's body to the sky. The spiritual essence that was swiftly forming within old ghost Yudu's body also instantly froze at this moment. The expression of old ghost Yudu had already turned deathly pale the moment the blood seal appeared. Even the spirit would be afraid when the blood seal appeared. This was the impression that the people of the Yuanwu continent had of the blood seal. In front of the blood seal, unless one's spiritual strength far exceeded the other parties, one would only end up being suppressed. The blood seal of the ghost obliterating sect had never failed before. TSK, you will not be able to escape death today. Spirit devouring art, devouring the heavens in spirit. With an explosive cry, the space in front of the third hall master suddenly exploded. Pitch black fog swept out in all directions, instantly wrapping old ghost Yudu's spirit and beginning to refine it. At the same time, 10,000 miles away, two figures, one old and one young, were rapidly rushing towards the savage ancient city. From the looks of it, it was no different from fleeing for their lives. Suddenly, the old man's body abruptly paused as he stood in the air, his face instantly filled with astonishment. Elder, you. Don't say anything else, quickly leave. I can't hold on for much longer. Quickly leave this place and find a baby boy for me. Quickly. Before his voice faded, the old man had already grabbed the young man and fled into the distance. The old man and the young man were Suzhen and his great-grandfather. After witnessing Xiaoyan's power, Suzhen's great-grandfather had quickly fled Yanluo City with him. As for the other members of the Su clan, they had died in the city due to their serious injuries. Now, only Suzhen and his great-grandfather were left in the huge Su clan. All of this had happened in a single day. A day ago, they were living like true sacred emperors. In a single day, they had been destroyed. The affairs of the world were unpredictable. It was truly pitiful and lamentable. Chapter 95. This vast scene continued for a full 2 hours before the man below the tornado suddenly opened his eyes. He looked down at the endless dark abyss. At this moment, there was an extremely frightening aura continuously gathering and rising. That might shook the heavens. A deep sullenness surfaced on Xiaoyan's somewhat pale face at this moment. He had yet to recover at this moment, but something had clearly happened to the third hall master duo that caused their auras to become so frightening. If they were to fight at this moment, it was likely that Xiaoyan would have difficulty winning. Currently, this aura was becoming increasingly powerful. It was likely too late for Xiaoyan to withdraw even if he wanted to. Since there was no way to retreat, the only method now was to forcefully fight with these two people. With this thought in his mind, Xiaoyan also slowly stopped circulating the flame art chi method in his body. The aura of his entire body suddenly shook. His body flashed and once again stood in the empty space. He adjusted his condition to the best possible state and quietly waited for the appearance of the two people below. Bang! An explosive bang was emitted from the endless deep abyss below Xiaoyan. The originally incomparably deep empty space once again shattered with a bang under this sound. Immediately, Xiaoyan saw a 1,000-foot wide dark black do chi light pillar pass through the restraints of space in an instant and arrive in front of Xiaoyan. An attack suddenly smashed toward Xiaoyan. Xiaoyan's expression was involuntarily startled. It was likely that even the third hall master at his peak condition would not be able to unleash such a swift and violent attack. What exactly happened? From the looks of it, that old ghost Yudu should have yet to come out. However, why is the third hall master's aura so powerful? This thought swiftly flashed across Xiaoyan's heart. However, he no longer had the mood to bother about these things. The attack in front of him had already arrived in front of him. It was merely 10 feet away from Xiaoyan. Sky absolute step. Open. In a moment of desperation, the do chi within Xiaoyan's body wildly swept out. His feet moved and the sky absolute step was instantly unleashed to its limit. Without any sound, the empty space around Xiao Yan's body instantly collapsed. Xiao Yan's body also instantly disappeared, leaving behind a substance-like afterimage. Before that afterimage could disappear, that earth-shaking attack suddenly struck across the sky. Everywhere it passed, everything turned into a deathly silent void. It caused one to feel a wave of terror surge into one's heart, something that was difficult to erase. TSK, 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 TSK. Xiao Yan, today, you will definitely belong to the old me. The old me also advises you to seal your own cultivation as soon as possible and make a trip with the old me. That way, you can avoid suffering this physical pain. Xiao Yan's body had just appeared in the sky. He had yet to move when the third hall master's figure, which was wrapped in a black fog, had already appeared a couple of dozen feet in front of him. He faced Xiao Yan from a distance and smiled as he looked at the solemn-faced Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan also instantly saw the third hall master when he raised his eyes. His originally solemn expression instantly became incomparably solemn. At this moment, the third hall master's strength had already far surpassed his previous strength. The strength of his aura had likely already reached the intermediate 8th star half-martial emperor level. His strength had far surpassed Xiao Yan's. In addition to Xiao Yan's current condition, it was likely impossible for him to escape from the third hall master's hands. Fighting with his life on the line was Xiao Yan's only way out at this moment. If his luck was still acceptable, he might still have a chance to survive. Otherwise, he would end up in a situation where he would never be able to recover. In merely an instant, thousands of thoughts flashed across Xiao Yan's mind. A determined expression surged into his eyes as he looked at the third hall master. In today's battle, if the third hall master did not die, then he, the Flame Emperor, would fall. He would definitely go all out in this battle. Humph. Based on your understanding of me, do you think that I will accept my fate? Hearing this, the third hall master could not help but frown slightly. However, soon after, he relaxed his brows. He naturally knew Xiao Yan's temperament very well. In that case, Xiao Yan's words meant that he was going to start the battle. TSK, 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 you are indeed worthy of being called the Flame Emperor Xiao Yan. This courage is really not something that an ordinary person can match. It is likely that only you are able to remain so imposing in this life and death situation. There's no need to say anything more. Although I can see that your aura is that of an 8th star half-martial emperor, there is clearly another tyrannical aura within your body that is still resisting. If I'm not wrong, that aura belongs to that old ghost, you do. In response to the third hall master's endless procrastination, the corners of Xiao Yan's mouth curled up into a cold smile as he coldly said. Haha, the Flame Emperor is indeed the Flame Emperor. In front of you, our methods are as clear as our understanding of you. There are no secrets at all. Humph, it is only because I have seen too much of it. You damned things always like to steal souls. TSK, 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 there will come a day when you will understand that in the face of great strength, all methods are just a method of survival. Before his voice sounded, the third hall master suddenly flipped his hand across the air. Wild and violent black do chi surged and churned like a tidal wave. In an instant, it transformed into a large hand in front of the third hall master. A palm suddenly smashed toward Xiao Yan. The instant this large palm attacked, Xiao Yan's expression had already changed drastically. The space around him had actually been completely sealed the instant the large palm attacked. Dodging this attack was completely a pipe dream. Damn it, looks like I can only face him head-on. Yellow Spring Palm. Not daring to underestimate it, Xiao Yan's mind moved and from the still somewhat empty vortex in his body, waves of extremely pure do chi quickly followed the root of the chi method in Xiao Yan's body and circulated into his palm. With an explosive cry, the yellow spring palm was unleashed by Xiao Yan. It also transformed into a towering flame palm against the wind. The palm violently smashed toward the black heaven ascending palm. TSK, 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 at this moment, there is not much do chi left in your body. How can you fight the old me with such a weak palm? Demonic cloud palm, break. As the third hall master let out a low cry, the large heaven ascending palm, which had already arrived in front of Xiao Yan, suddenly spread out a circle of dense black fog. It collided with Xiao Yan's yellow spring palm. Crack. A clear sound was emitted from the empty space. The circle of black fog was subsequently broken apart. An even more frightening force shot out and instantly broke Xiao Yan's yellow spring palm with a single blow. Even though this was the case, the force did not diminish as it swiftly blasted toward Xiao Yan. Seeing this scene, the expression on Xiao Yan's face instantly became so solemn that it seemed as though water could be wrung out of it. The aura of Xiao Yan's body suddenly shook. The heavenly flame in his body poured out. He clenched his hand across the air and the endless heavenly flame transformed into a large fire ruler. Without any hesitation, Xiao Yan held the large fire ruler in one hand and pulled it close to him. Both of his hands held the ruler's hilt. Both of his arms suddenly moved and the beautiful large fire ruler swiftly began to circle around Xiao Yan's body. A seemingly substance-like heavenly flame barrier also appeared around Xiao Yan's body, firmly protecting him within. Six-joint body flowing ruler. The moment the six-joint body flowing ruler was displayed, the strong and ferocious force also violently smashed onto the heavenly flame barrier. Bang! With a loud bang, Xiao Yan's body, which was standing horizontally in the empty space, involuntarily flew back by 10,000 feet. Only then did he stabilize his body with great difficulty. Even his arm, which was holding the large ruler, felt a bone-breaking pain. Xiao Yan clenched his teeth tightly. His eyes stared intently at the large palm that was smashing toward him. The dou qi in his body suddenly poured out, forcefully suppressing the pain on both of his arms. His hand, which was holding the large ruler, once again waved it. The large ruler stood horizontally beside Xiao Yan. The dou qi in his body surged out from his palm and covered the entire large ruler, causing it to appear incomparably gorgeous. Flame. Devouring. Wave. Ruler. Xiao Yan suddenly let out an explosive cry toward the sky. His hand, which was holding the large ruler, suddenly exerted force and swept it horizontally toward the large palm. 1,000-foot wide heavenly flame wave carried a frightening monstrous might as it violently smashed toward the large palm. Bang! An earth-shaking explosion suddenly swept apart from the two dou skills. Soon after, a monstrous wave that carried a vast heavenly might swept in all directions. The bodies of Xiao Yan and the third hall master were sent flying by this huge wave over 500 kilometers. Xiao Yan's body was forcefully stopped in the air. That powerful strength caused the injuries that Xiao Yan had been suppressing earlier to suddenly erupt at this moment. A large mouthful of blood. Only at this moment were the two of them able to clearly see just how great the strength of these two dou skills was after they exploded. The frightening explosion caused a mushroom cloud, which was like an ancient tree that covered the sky, to rise from the middle. Under this mushroom cloud, this entire world was completely covered within it. Due to the presence of the heavenly flame, this mushroom cloud appeared to be half a blazing flame while the other half was a darkness that could swallow the empty space. Xiao Yan's heart once again tightened when he saw this. His all-out attack was only able to break this large palm. If this were to continue, it was likely that he would really die here today. Xiao Yan's body flashed. He unleashed the sky absolute step with all his might. The little dou qi in his body was also completely squeezed out. His body swiftly flashed as he held the large ruler with both hands and suddenly smashed it toward the third hall master with all his might. Given the third hall master's current peak condition, every action of Xiao Yan's was basically seen by him. It was impossible for Xiao Yan to forcefully collide with him. However, when the third hall master saw Xiao Yan's crazy expression, a mocking expression surged deep within his eyes. Ha! Xiao Yan completely ignored the feeling of exhaustion in his body. The giddiness that was transmitted from his mind was also forcefully suppressed by him as he wildly smashed toward the third hall master without any regard for his life. Humph! The third hall master let out a cold snort. His eyes stared at Xiao Yan, completely ignoring the large fire ruler that was flying toward him. The third hall master waited until the large ruler was in front of his face and the searing hot aura invaded his body before he suddenly turned his body. The large ruler pressed close to the third hall master's chest as it smashed down. A feeling of danger immediately surged into Xiao Yan's heart when he saw this scene. However, the action of his hand was clearly not something that he could control at this moment. The third hall master also used this opportunity to ruthlessly slap his palm forward and violently strike Xiao Yan's chest. A chi sound was mixed with a few clear sounds of bones breaking. Xiao Yan bent his body and spat out a large mouthful of fresh blood. His body flew backwards uncontrollably. The third hall master clearly did not want to let Xiao Yan off so easily. Before Xiao Yan could stop his body, the third hall master's figure once again appeared behind Xiao Yan. Another palm ruthlessly met with Xiao Yan's body that was flying backwards. Bang! With a bang sound, Xiao Yan's body once again turned around and continued to fly forward. He was like a football that continuously flew forward. Fresh blood was also freely spat out from Xiao Yan's mouth. At this moment, Xiao Yan was truly like a lamp that had run out of oil. He could only be mercilessly toyed with by the third hall master. Bang! With another bang sound, Xiao Yan's body flew backwards by 10,000 feet. This time, the third hall master did not chase after him. After all, from the third hall master's point of view, Xiao Yan was already unable to escape from his palm. Since he had played enough, there was no need to continue. If Xiao Yan died, he would really be unable to answer to his superiors. Xiao Yan also stabilized his body with great difficulty. His eyes were filled with ruthlessness as he looked at the third hall master. However, under this ruthlessness, there was also some helplessness. At this point, I'm afraid that I can't care so much. Although I don't know if it will be effective, I can only try my best. Xiao Yan forcefully endured the pain and weakness brought about by the serious injuries on his body. He clenched his teeth tightly, emitting waves of creaking sounds. Fresh blood continuously flowed out from the corner of his mouth. His palms, which were also stained with blood, slowly gathered strength. After a few breaths, he suddenly clenched his palms. The pain in his body seemed to have disappeared in an instant. His aura suddenly fluctuated. His hands were held in front of his chest. His fingers swiftly moved, and mysterious symbols were formed one after another. With a thought, the light in Xiao Yan's eyes suddenly shook. Following this, he let out an explosive cry in his heart. Clan Tattoo, appear.